I have found, Dan, that there's a strange sense of freedom that comes from doing what you believe in, never questioning the mission. Like once you feel like I'm doing good in the world, or at least in the attempt, I'll leave things better than I found them. That that is empowerment on a level I never quite understood until very late in my career. That when you believe in what you're doing, you will have more stamina than others. You'll take a certain pleasure and joy in just the process.
Right.
And taking pleasure in the process is hugely empowering. It's what keeps you going every morning.
Welcome to Season 2 of Clearing Obstacles, the podcast for leaders and those that want to be, because no organization, not even yours, can thrive without effective leadership. Now, as you master this skill, it will become the superpower that gains the love and respect of your team, the freedom you seek in your life and business, and ultimately, the success of your vision. I'm your host and coach, Dan Kent, with Best Self Coaching, and in Season 2, we're bringing you the voices of thought leaders who have a unique and valuable perspective to share on how to reimagine and redefine leadership in our world today. We'll be diving into topics of vision and authority and accountability, management, culture, vulnerability, self-awareness, and much more, because they all fall on the shoulders of today's leaders. Are you one of those exceptional people? Well, you can be. Our guests all have extensive theoretical and philosophical depth that's also matched by their experience in the practical application of those principles. And we think you're going to agree. So, all of you emerging and evolving leaders, buckle up as we clear the obstacles to help you get there from here. A great story can change the world. Now, it was a random Tuesday morning a couple years ago, and I was slogging my way through the morning, fairly certain that my day was about to feel like the longest week of my life. The coffee wasn't working its usual magic, and the mound of work awaiting me only amplified my desire for a 12-year sabbatical. So I did what any self-respecting professional business coach does. I procrastinated with social media. Now, as my thumb flicked my phone upward for the umpteenth time, a particular reel caught my eye. This charismatic, middle-aged gentleman in a bespoke suit appeared, sharing a story that stood out amidst the usual banal content found on social media. That man was Neal Foard. Now, Neal began recounting a story about a mentor he had when he was just starting out in the advertising world. And I'm going to let him tell you that story in a moment. But the point is, in those 2 to 3 minutes, he managed to transform my outlook for the entire day. And since then, his consistently compelling messages about our shared humanity have continued to inspire me, helping to turn challenging days into optimistic weeks, and those weeks into some transformative months. Now, it's time to let Neal lean into the mic once again and share with you how the art of storytelling can change the world by empowering leaders to provide the kind of necessary inspiration, values alignment, and guidance to those in their orbits. So Neal Foard, welcome to the Clearing Obstacles podcast. I am just thrilled to have you here.
Hey, thank you, Dan, for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure.
We're talking about my favorite subject, stories.
Stories. Let's just give our listeners a little bit of context. Tell us a little bit about where you're at now, what you're doing, and maybe a few words about how you got here.
Right on. I spent 30 years in advertising. And in that profession, what I wound up doing for the bulk of my time was making presentations to clients in various forms. I was on the creative side of the business. I was originally a copywriter. And as a result of thousands and thousands of presentations where I was presenting advertising concepts in the hope that the clients would buy them, you pick up enough experience to feel comfortable using an art form that's basically 30,000 years old, which is producing in the minds of people images and understanding on a level that simply telling them facts can't. Storytelling is the default operating system of human beings. It's how we understand everything. You can imagine, Dan, if 100,000 years ago, human beings would have been genetically largely what we are now, but our lives would have no television and no devices and no true. Universities, anything like that. The way we imagine us, we're sitting around, cooking meat and socializing with the rest of our little tribal unit, and we're trying to make sense of what is lightning made of? Why do the stars move through the sky? What are the seasons for? And why do we die? What's that about?
Right.
And in order to make sense of any of this, to feel even the tiniest sliver of control over our existence, we have to explain it to one another. And the way we would do it is we would explain it around the campfire. And this storytelling forms our version of the world. It's how we understand who we are
Yeah.
and what we're here for and why we're here. And it establishes relationships. And as you can imagine, if you are a good storyteller, well, there's a certain amount of power and potency that comes with that. So where I'm at in my career is, from my long experience telling stories, I now teach it to people, especially C-suite executives who need to inspire their people and need to give them a sense of mission and have them not understand that, your task is to add this column of numbers up correctly, but rather this is how you fit into a larger mission. And this is what brings us meaning aside from the money, because it always has to be about more than the money.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do now. I've, from my description of the campfire, my brand is Storyfire.
Uh-huh.
It's a storytelling course that I know Dan.
I do
and,
indeed.
Storyfire.net is the website. And that's my profession at this point is trying to train people to be better storytellers at this very ancient technology that I have a feeling will never go out of style.
I have a feeling you're right. And I will echo the value of storyfire.net. It's a tremendous course. Neal and his team do just an incredible job at it. I've gone through it twice now already.
Oh.
And it continues to just kind of embed not just the academic fundamentals of it, but the spirit behind a well-crafted story and the impact that it has. And which is a good segue. When the art and the discipline of storytelling comes up in business, the first thought naturally goes to marketing and sales, and for good reason, right? But you've advocated, and I have to wholeheartedly agree, that it's especially vital to overall leadership as well. Can you speak to that idea a little bit?
Yeah, it really becomes significant and important that your team believe in their mission, that there's so much effort that can be applied in extra when people believe in what they're doing. And a leader that is skilled at saying, here's why this matters. And I'll give you a good example that seems counterintuitive, but the Muay Thai in Thailand, that martial art is brutal. It's brutal, the training they go through. It's brutal when they're in the ring. It's a really savage way of fighting. And yet, the fighters themselves are often very gentle people. Thai people they're very graceful in aspect. That is, their language is beautiful and their demeanor is quite peaceful and calm. And yet when these people get in the ring, you have never seen more ferocious human beings in your life. How do they do that? Well, in Thailand, to be a Muay Thai fighter, you can make a lot of money under conditions where a lot of these kids come from abject poverty.
Yeah.
And what they do in order to supply the gasoline for their ferocity is they're doing it for their families. They're doing it because they want to raise their families out of poverty. And when they cannot go on anymore, when they're in the ring and outmatched and on the brink of disaster, they draw their power from knowing that their mission is, I will not surrender. I cannot surrender.
Yeah.
This is for my family.
Yeah.
And it's that belief that supplies them with superhuman stamina and the will to continue. Well, all human beings are like that. When you're engaged in a job that's difficult and has challenges and you really can't find the strength to go on, if you just believe in what you're doing, if you believe that it's right, if you believe that you can succeed because you deserve to, it supplies you with extra strength that will, it can be the margin of victory. And leaders that are able to give their people that sense, and it doesn't just have to be CEOs. CFOs can be really instrumental in helping their people believe in their mission.
Yeah.
especially CFOs that can explain we can make it, we will succeed. If you keep in mind these things, we're ready to win. We're powered up to win.
Right.
Or you better turn it on now, because if we don't do it in the next 90 days, it ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
A CFO that can deliver more than the numbers, can deliver a sense of possibilities and a sense of urgency. And those people are incredibly valuable. Just consider how much more powerful it is that a CFO can do more than add numbers, and can do more than supervise people that can add numbers correctly. And even can do more than just explain what the numbers mean, but they can tell you where the numbers are headed or where the numbers could go. Those people are very valuable because they provide the proof positive that success is either imminent or in danger.
Right.
And a CEO and a CFO that can sing off the same song sheet, a chief operating officer that can explain this is what we have to do to get this to come true, and explain success is inevitable if we do these things. Can like Dan, entrepreneurs have to believe it's possible.
Right.
Otherwise, they're just going to throw themselves sort of half-heartedly into something.
Yeah. It's just too damn hard to
Right.
not have that kind of faith
Right.
and optimism about it.
You have to believe that it's possible, that it will happen if you do the following. Well, storytelling is all part of saying, this is why I believe it's going to succeed. And if you throw 100% of effort, it's not just possible, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Imagine being able, as a CFO or a startup, being able to go into investors and not just have them believe that it's possible, but that your success is inevitable. Now that's the difference between getting $20,000 out of them and $50,000.
Mm-hmm.
That they're thinking this is a very secure bet. That's storytelling. That's not always the numbers. You have to believe in the charisma of the founder, that he'll be able to talk other people into it.
Right.
And that potency and power, I believe, derives not just from how persuasive you are as a person, but in belief. And belief comes from doing the right thing. Belief comes from knowing that your solution is ethically correct and can empower other people, can make them happy that they work for you. It isn't enough to be glib and to be a clever storyteller. You have to deliver the kind of story where everybody can look at it and go, yeah, I want to be part of that. I won't just do it for the money. It's not about the money. It's about something bigger than the money.
I am totally tracking you here. And I want to go a little esoteric on this, because those stories that we receive from others play a significant role in the stories that we're telling ourselves in our own inner dialogue. You're great at conveying, you're sublime at the way you can convey a story and give that to an audience, whoever that is, even a one-on-one audience. Do you find yourself crafting stories for Neal Foard at 2 a.m. when you're in your head, when you're thinking about it? Do you find yourself applying some of the same principles, which I'd like to get into in a minute here, but do you find yourself doing that with yourself as well?
I have found, Dan, that there's a strange sense of freedom that comes from doing what you believe in, never questioning the mission. Once you feel like I'm doing good in the world, or at least in the attempt, I'll leave things better than I found them. That is empowerment on a level I never quite understood until very late in my career. That when you believe in what you're doing, you will have more stamina than others. You'll take a certain pleasure and joy in just the process.
Right.
And taking pleasure in the process is hugely empowering. It's what keeps you going every morning. Like you hit the typewriter early in the morning. When you get somebody like a Stephen King or a Kurt Vonnegut, Stephen King especially, he's in love with the process.
Right.
I've never seen anybody like, you could, if you really were forced to, you could take a Stephen King book and you could distill it down into about 35 pages. But he loves the process. So what he does is he just enjoys telling that story.
Right.
Gets up every morning. As I understand it, he is 7 days a week.
Yeah.
he hits that typewriter. I'm probably going to get this wrong, but as I understand it, he's typing at 8:30 and he doesn't stop typing until about 2:30 in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
And so he's banging out content. And I believe it's because he has the confidence that people are going to enjoy this.
Yeah.
He gets feedback from knowing that people are going to enjoy it. Okay. In my case, I'm always looking for a reassurance that people aren't as bad as we're being told. I look for it wherever I go in this gym.
So that's kind of your story.
Yeah. I'm looking for it in traffic. I'm looking for it in a restaurant. When I meet a stranger, I'm looking for reassurance that most of us are pretty cool. And that with that reassurance, I have the ability to then go and spread that evangel that we're not as bad as we're being told. And that's why. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you have a terrific way of, and I think it's a quote from somebody else, something, and clean this up for me. There's nothing wrong with this that can't, what is it?
There's nothing wrong with us that can't be fixed by what's right with us. And that's my most fervent belief, and it's our hope for the future. Yeah. That what you will find, Dan, I don't know if you have identifiably, that you have friends that are identifiably not of your political persuasion, but I do have multiple friends like this where we do not see eye to eye politically.
Yeah.
But there is tremendous satisfaction that I take from how well I get along with people that I don't see politically eye to eye with.
Yeah.
One guy in particular I have a huge admiration for, and he just does not see the world the way that I see it, but I really enjoy his company. And what that gives me faith in is that we could find, if we really decided to take that on as a topic,
yeah,
I'll bet you we could reach an accommodation where we would agree on 88% of everything.
Yeah.
And so here's where the pleasure comes from having a friend that you just know doesn't see things politically the way that you do. It just tells me that if I'm so enjoying their company and I like them as a person, then success is inevitable. Do you know what I mean? That we're never going to come to swords points over things we disagree about because we're both willing to accept that a reasonable person might not look at this the way that I do.
Right.
You know, I've often had this conversation with friends about religion. And I've said, just reassure me on one point. I want to just see how you answer just this one question. Is it possible for two very rational and well-meaning people to read the same religious text and come up with different conclusions? Is it possible? They say, yes, it's possible. Okay, then we're fine. Because what you're telling me is it's possible for reasonable people to disagree.
Yeah. There's incidentally a terrific organization out there, and I probably discovered them because of the algorithm that I have curated on my social media feed. An organization called Starts With Us. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
Oh, terrific. Yeah. They've got a great board. They've got wonderful thought leaders on them. I mean, listeners, go check them out. Starts With Us. They put people together who are just diametrically opposed politically or socially in a whole host of ways, and bring them together to discover their shared humanity. And then they broach the subject that might be contentious, and they see each other from a whole different perspective. Even if they don't see that perspective as their own truth, they still see the humanity in the other.
Yeah.
Great organization.
Yeah, it's really, really significant and important that we must never treat people as enemies just because we disagree. Because Dan, you may know, I like to read old books. I like to read books that are more than 100 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of like 1870s authors.
Yeah.
And what that's instructive of is when you read these stories written in that time frame from their vantage point, you howl with laughter that nothing's changed.
This is enduring truths.
Yeah, that the enduring truths that we're all a bunch of fools, blindly
grappling to find our way.
Right. And that whenever we grab hold of something that we think is true, careful, because you don't know that might not be the thing that ultimately reveals itself as true. But here's one thing that I am suspecting is true. is that human beings don't change, that in all the time of our recorded history, it's basically the same species, that you cannot look back into history and judge them and think, oh, what a bunch of ignoramuses. Oh, no, no, no. Because growing up in that environment under those circumstances, you would have the same opinions.
Yeah.
You would have the same opinions. You would behave the same way. Okay. Now, fast forward to today. What that also means is, oh, if I grew up in that culture with those parents,
Yeah.
I probably would react the same way. And if I would react the same way, then what am I getting upset about? I need to give them more sense of peace. In other words, I'm not judging you. I'm asking for a dialogue right now so that between the two of us, you'll understand where I'm coming from so you don't judge me.
Right, right.
And if you don't mind, I'd like to tell one story about this veterinarian.
Oh, please.
Because I think what it's an indication of is like you just need to give people a little grace under moments when they're not at their best.
Mm-hmm.
So my son did an internship with a veterinarian over the summer, and he was surprised to discover how much of a veterinarian's life is taken up with putting animals down and having to deal with the grief of the owner who has to say goodbye to a pet.
Yeah.
And one day, this woman came in who was a frequent guest. She's very well-to-do. And she wanted to just basically drop off her dog and have him killed and skedaddle. And she was being incredibly rude to the staff who were suggesting maybe she wanted to stick around for it. She was being very confrontational, and they were interpreting this as, oh, this is a textbook example of an entitled diva. And they had it with her. The veterinarian, however, who had a very gentle aspect, this woman veterinarian, she was very sweet with this woman, despite the nastiness. And she was being gentle and saying, why don't you come back to the room with us? And it took some doing, but she managed to persuade this woman. So my son brought the dog back. The veterinarian said, I remember because things were not going all that well for you. You were really down on your luck. And it was just one thing after another. Do you remember? But what I do remember is how sweet you were with Sonny. And I thought, even back then, when you couldn't rub two nickels together, I remember thinking, oh, this dog is so lucky to have her. Do you remember that? Well, he's lucky to have you here now. And the dam burst. And she just began to sob. This woman just was weeping into the dog's fur. And eventually while she was in tears, they put the dog to sleep. And they left her in the room with the dog. And many, many minutes later, she finally emerged. And she came back out and she hugged the veterinarian. And I mean, it was like this, one of those endless, inconsolable hugs. And then she thanked her and then she went on her way. And my son was so impressed that she'd seen that outcome coming. And he said, how could you be so nice to that woman who was just being awful to all of us? And her response, which was very wise, said, you cannot, when a wounded animal nips at you, you can't be upset with it. You don't know what kind of pain people are carrying around. That's the way people are with their grief. They react differently. And I thought, oh my God, what a lesson to have learned, that when people are dealing out of pain, you can't be mean to them about how they're reacting. Yeah. Because you don't know what's driving that bus.
Right.
It could be anything. Have a little compassion for sometimes being nasty is a sign of bottled up things that have happened to them.
Right.
Isn't that true, Dan, that I've done that, you've probably done it, where we're reacting angrily, but in fact, we're to blame. What we're doing is we're just venting on stuff that we couldn't get out of our system.
Absolutely. Countless times. I'm sorry, by the way, to everybody. I've done that too.
Yes. And I've had to apologize. My daughter really, truly unlocked that for me. And she's been instrumental. My son and daughter both have been instrumental in trying to make me a better person by recognizing that you cannot react to small things that are seemingly driving you crazy, because you know perfectly well, Dad, it's not the fact that you're spending a long time waiting for the DMV. That's not what's making you mad.
Yeah.
Right? So stop blaming it on them. And geez, she's right. Okay, so what does all that add up to? What it adds up to for me is I just want to make sure that the story I'm telling in the world, the story I'm reinforcing, and the way that I am in the world is to be nicer to people and understand that even if I don't get it back, even if I don't get a really sweet smile in return, that's okay because they're dealing with something.
Yeah.
I just want to be a better part of their day. If I can, I'd like to improve their day. Well, this art form, this storytelling art form, for me, is very much the difference between, yes, I understand, and, oh.
Yeah.
And when I tell you that story about the veterinarian, you get it. You see what I mean in a way that I simply couldn't tell you. You need to be nicer to people because you don't know what they're going through. That's not enough.
That's not enough. Yeah. So well put. What a terrific story too. And aren't you just humbled by the way our kids can often be our best teachers that way?
They have a permission that even your spouse doesn't seem to have to be critical of you. You just care so much what your children think of you that when they point out that you're not at your best, it's transformative. It's like, okay, well, I'm definitely going to.
Yeah, it cuts different.
It does. It does. My wife, for example, can say to me, Neal, calm down. And it just doesn't have the same effect as your daughter saying, please calm down. And then you go, oh, crap. Just the very phrase, calm down, it has absolutely the opposite effect on most people.
Has the opposite effect. Right. I know somebody well who their biggest hammer that they can use when they see a particular person not being their best self, they say, when you behave this way, you're hurting the people you love. Do you realize that?
Wow, that's profound.
Right? And that
is a hammer.
That is a hammer, and it's transformative in their relationship because to say calm down or to say be nice doesn't do it.
No, at all. At all.
That's the short story. That's the baby shoes never worn for sale story, right? It's that the ability to convey the message.
Just in that, Dan, in that very short thing that you just said, though, I got it. I totally got it because that phrase, when you're like this, you're hurting the people you love. It's like, oh, well, oof, that cuts you to the quick because perfectly well, you do not have that in mind. That's not your intention. No. And when you think about it, Dan, I wonder, certainly there have been great orators in history who have used the talent to enflame and enrage.
Absolutely.
And so in many ways, storytelling is very much like fire. It is a tool that can warm you and it can cook food and it can power things, or it can burn everything down.
Devastate, yeah.
And this is why, for me, that in the Storyfire thing, why I'm always on about, it has to be the things you choose to talk about tell me everything about you.
Yeah.
And I need to know from you, especially if I'm a leader. If I'm a leader in a company, I need to know this is not about you. I need to know this isn't for your own enrichment and your own aggrandizement.
Right.
I need to believe that you're doing this because you care about us. And if you don't, there's a whole generation of people now that are not putting up with that bullshit. They just are not putting up with you making it about you.
I say good on them. I'm probably not really popular because I think a lot of people see that as sort of an entitlement of the younger generation, which again, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
I know, right?
Our contempt for the younger generations is universal. You can look back forever.
Let's talk about that very thing. I think that you've hit on a profound topic, our contempt for the younger generation, which is perpetual. I can find you articles from 1785 talking about how the younger generation doesn't want to work anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So this is not news, and it's not new. What we need to do, I believe there is a great tragedy afoot. Anybody that tries to foment the separation of the generations is an a-hole of cosmic proportions because we have so much to gain from talking to each other. The experience of an 80-year-old who's still all there is they will be able to tell you what the cycles are and what is repeating itself. And a new person can acquaint an 80-year-old saying, can I tell you what the contemporary state of things are in a way that you'll understand the pain and the suffering of somebody who's not equipped how you are. Like Imagine knowing at 20 that you don't know anything. It's really painful.
Yeah.
It's really painful. I don't know how finances work. I don't know who's trying to victimize me and who's trying to support me. I don't know what you know, Mr. 65-year-old who has all the money. I don't know what you know. Help me. And at the same time, an older person has so much to gain from helping a 25-year-old make their way in the world. Now, you're thinking, what does it profit me that I should help cultivate someone's career? Brother, let me tell you, you have so much to gain psychically, psychologically, in your heart. Just this morning, I was talking to this 25-year-old Pakistani animator, and she's thinking she's the one who's getting all the benefit, and it is exactly the opposite. I'm getting all the benefit because I feel so good about helping her. I can see where her heart is. I can see what she's up against. I get to unlock that puzzle. I get to say, can I give you the benefit of when you use this terminology, can I tell you what a 65-year-old man hears?
Right.
Because they're not hearing what you think they're hearing.
Right.
And when you try to separate the generations, when you try to make them feel like they hate each other, when they actually don't, when you're in an office and a 55-year-old is talking to a 30-year-old who has a different life experience, you both benefit in ways that you're not expecting.
Right.
And the whole office benefits. And what has happened is that companies regard people over 50 as too expensive and not fast enough on their feet. And by disrespecting their institutional knowledge, you are robbing the company of mentors, and you're ripping out by the root all of the institutional knowledge and experience that's been so hard won, and the relationships on the Rolodex of somebody who's 50, who he can hand it over, or she can hand it over to you remember that story I was telling in Storyfire about how there's this gal who is in operations and she's eating her lunch alone every day. And this young guy who's a salesperson, he discovers her, and he feels bad for her that she's eating her lunch alone. So he decides he's going to join her, only to discover that she is the key to unlocking a career-changing event. And she knows they're about to get fired as a company by that client. And she drops that bomb on this young guy and says, I think if you do the following, you can shore that up and actually be the savior of this business, which he then subsequently does. That's the sort of happenstance that happens when you're in the hallways of a company and the generations are able to mingle. All that institutional knowledge gets dropped on somebody who doesn't have to experience it to learn from it and to use it. And it's partly why, I think that popular or unpopular as this is an opinion, a lot gets lost when we're only dealing with each other on Zoom. There's so much to be gained from those moments of silence and courtesy and respect and affection that happen when you're actually on the same piece of carpet.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And we'll say it louder for the folks in the back about the value of institutional knowledge. And, I think we have a tendency to sort of distill down these concepts to diversity in the workplace and kind of these buzz phrases that we're trying to encapsulate the message that you just delivered about how we're all better. We're all better by experiencing each other's perspectives, seeing one another's humanity, appreciating the value of what these diverse opinions are offering to us. It's not just good humanity. At the end of the day, God damn, I'll die on this hill. It's good business too.
It is. It's very profitable. It's incredibly profitable. I'll give you a great example. Dan, you know that story that I tell about. I had a boss that wasn't my boss. He was just a guy in the office who was watching me slowly unravel. We were working easily 16 hours a day. And, you'd be in the office at 7:30 and you wouldn't be leaving until, 10:30. And we were just grinding. And I was coming apart at the seams. And he's saying to me, I think, again, keep in mind, this is not my boss. I think you are going insane in front of my eyes. And it's killing me. It's killing me, Neal. You need to do two things. Are you ready? One, call in sick tomorrow take the day off. Anybody asks, tell them I said so. All right. You're doing a special project for me. That's, from the chairman's office. Okay. Well, don't worry. I'll cover for you. Second thing is, do you really only have that one suit? Is that really every day you show up in the same ratty, stained clothes? What the hell? Well, I don't have any money. I know you don't have any money. Do me a favor. I want you to, on your day off, I want you to go to a very nice store. In this case, it was Nordstrom. I want you to buy 2 suits on credit. All right. Don't get cheap suits. Get 2 nice suits. What we're going to do is I'm going to expense them. We're going to figure out a way that it all looks like we're going to pay you back. We're going to pay you back. It's going to look like meals, like company meals with clients, and I'll backstop you. Okay. Jesus, man, you look like ass. Okay. So I go to Nordstrom. I buy these 2 new suits and I looked snappy.
Sure.
They were nice. One was a Ralph Lauren. It was really nice. Glen Plaid. And then I find out years after the fact, he just bought me those suits. That all these receipts that I was turning in, he was just paying for it out of his own pocket.
He never got expense to the client.
No, it wasn't expense. It was him paying for them because he didn't want any shenanigans. He wasn't that way. He wasn't the type to post false expenses. And I learned this from him. You have a clear conscience when you go to bed, man, about everything. You'll sleep better. Trust me. Because the guy that lies once is going to lie more than once.
Yeah.
The guy that cheats his expenses, he's going to cheat more than once. You're going to wind up cheating on your taxes and then you're going to do time. So so he just paid for him outright. Okay. But here's what happens. I was loyal to that guy and stay so for 40 years. Like 100% loyalty. Anything ever happens to him, you have me to answer to. And you know how that is. If you're in an office and you hear something that's untoward, do you let it ride? No, you go right up there. Just so you know, if you say a negative word about that guy in my presence, we're going to exchange blows.
We're going to be toe to toe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not going to put up with that. I don't want to hear it from you because you don't know what the F you're talking about. This kind of loyalty, and loyalty out of love, not loyalty because he does stuff for me.
Right. It's not a reciprocal quid pro quo
kind of. It's not quid pro quo. It's belief.
Yeah.
I believe in his goodness.
In his character.
I believe in his character. And what happens in that environment is you grow acolytes. You grow true believers. You grow people who are religious about values. And those people are deadly. They'll work harder. They'll work longer. And it won't be work. Can you imagine? He didn't ever. But if he'd asked me to help him move refrigerators all weekend, I am there absolutely on a Saturday.
You're the
with bells on.
2 a.m. with a shovel kind of guy.
2 a.m. with a shovel, 100%. No questions asked. I don't need to know. I need to know only what you're willing to tell me.
Right.
And even then, so what I'm getting at is, well, how is that profitable? Because so much of business is I don't need to turn in an expense report on this. I got it. And this relationship is decades long.
Yeah. Yeah.
And think about how it is with clients. With clients, you don't want a transaction with a client. You want a relationship
all day
with a client because if it's profitable. A CFO who knows that business is going to be perpetual, he can make predictions. He can make bets off of knowing that income is going to be is solid.
Right.
You know that customer acquisition costs are very expensive. A CAC is a big, and a recurring customer is 4 times more valuable. Infinitely cheaper. Therefore, what I'm getting at is the story that you tell, the story he tells in his gesture is, I care about you as a person. I am watching you unravel just so that you know somebody's going to watch out for you. It's going to be me, even though I'm not your boss. And what's more, let's see if I can't help you along your way. You're going to need to look better in this office. So
you'll feel better too.
Which I did. I felt much better.
I'm sure.
The story he's telling is I am a human being. You're a human being. We're in this together. Now let's
We're
look
in
at,
this together.
yeah. Let's look at the alternative. I am a company that has a position open, and I'm taking in resumes, and I ghost people. Like, I don't even tell you whether or not where the process is.
Right.
What story are you telling? I'm telling a story about a company that doesn't give a flying fuck about human beings. It doesn't care about your feelings. It's never about you as a person. It's exclusively and only about the money, and it always will be.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, you cannot trust me. I will stab you in the face at the first opportunity. And by the way, I'm not going to give you any warning about anything. And therefore, you better memorize this employment manual, to find the loopholes and the latitude.
Right.
And the people that work for a company like this, they have attorneys on speed dial, because you're not going to get any leeway. They're not going to. Every action you do tells a story.
Yeah.
And I don't think companies are sufficiently in understanding that small gestures communicate volumes.
Small gestures communicate volumes. There's in my early professional endeavors, I was working in a human resources department, and I'll never forget the day the company had just gone through being acquired by a larger company, and we'll keep the names out of this to protect the innocent and the guilty.
Good.
And it was announced that the human resources department, there was going to be some structural changes, and they were going to now be on the org chart underneath the legal department. Yeah, that was my reaction too. Well, yeah. I'm in human resources, and they effectively gave the directive explicitly, because of our legal exposure in any termination practices, we essentially need to have a file on everybody. At any time, we could terminate them and have cause.
Yeah.
So they're looking out all the time for, the 3 write-ups, which, the 3 strikes, kind of thing. This was back in the mid-90s-ish. And I'll never forget.
It was that was early.
That was very early.
You were one of the.
They were very cutting edge in that.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, well, that's pretty shitty. But, I'm on a fast track here professionally that, I think maybe I can get behind this policy, and I'll kind of roll with it until the day came when I realized, oh, hold on.
Yeah.
That means somebody's got one.
You got one on
you. They got one on me. And literally within a month, I made a career transition. Yeah. It was that move. It was that gesture of what was being unspoken that is kind of what I was alluding to earlier is the story that they accidentally told formed a much more high def story in my own head about what was actually going on.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to them, they were telling a very clear story about what was important to them and what was not.
I was talking to a guy who does complex trusts, and he's very good at what he does. He can basically make it so you don't pay a dime in taxes.
Nice. Give me his number after this call.
Well, wait till you hear the rest of this.
Oh, okay.
So there was a point during the conversation where he said, and if we were to do such and such, you have to make absolutely sure that the name bears no connection to you. Oh. And I said, why? He said, because if it has any connection to you, that will alert the IRS. Again, what are you telling me? You're saying to me that if the IRS knew what I was doing, they would audit me over this. Yes, exactly. Bro, do you not see what you're suggesting? You're telling me, without clearly understanding what you're saying, you're helping me cheat on my taxes.
Right.
Because if they knew what I was doing, they wouldn't let me do it.
They wouldn't let me do it.
That's what you're saying. He couldn't make heads or tails out of my attitude. Like, I'm trying to help you here. Why are you being so hostile? But an HR department that is put under the legal department essentially is saying the entire motive of this department is to indemnify the company from bad behavior.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean we're going to stop behaving badly. In fact, we're probably going to have
As a matter
license
of
to
fact.
behave quite badly because I will always have this bullets loaded to
100%.
shoot people in the back of the head. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a certain cleverness to that.
There's prudence, sure.
But at the same time, that I believe will only lead to bad behavior.
Yeah.
I want to make a distinction I think you might find useful. Dan, you'll forgive me if you and I have had this conversation before, but I think it's really instructive. There was a time when they didn't call what we do in the marketplace, they didn't call it business. They called it trade.
Trade. Yeah.
And I find it very interesting, the distinction. When you use a word like trade, I am a trader, then what you're suggesting is, okay, I trade you this for that. You and I are exchanging gifts. We're exchanging value.
Yes.
And we have a relationship. The trade is inherent in the idea of trade is continued trade. The way that both you and I will make our fortunes is this is not a transaction. This is part of a relationship.
Right.
This
that requires a trust.
Right. There you go. Okay. So you've nailed the number one word in all of business. It's the number one word. It's what we should all strive for, is the ability of somebody else to trust that you're going to provide them with value in exchange, in a trade for some other piece of value. Tradesmen, I'm going to come in, I'm going to wire your house. You're going to get something very tangible in exchange for a fee. But I mean, it is what I told you I'm going to give you. There it is. You can see it.
Yep.
It's beautifully done. It's going to keep the house from catching on fire.
Exactly. Your house will burn down in the middle of the night.
Right.
It's going to be done well, and the lights will come on when you flip the switch.
Right. Plumber, framer, carpenter, these people give you a right. And they call it a tradesperson. I include a mechanic, anybody, they're a tradesperson. I find it instructive. There's no escaping that I gave you what I told you I'd give you. Like, there it is. You can see it. It's tangible. The minute that you change into a business person, you are one generation away from face to face. And I use this as an example. The Godfather, you remember in The Godfather, the very famous line is, Michael, it's not personal, it's just business.
Yeah.
In other words, they are saying business is not personal.
Which I call bullshit on every day if you've heard any
100%,
other episodes.
100%. But what they're suggesting is it's perfectly all right to kill someone if it's just business.
In the name of business.
In the name of business. As opposed to, if we were traders with a D, that's not proper behavior. That's violating our contract, our social contract. That's right. Violating our relationship. I worked for a time in China. I shouldn't say specifically China. I worked in Hong Kong, although it's it's China. It's China. And what I discovered, strangely, was Americans are fixated on contracts. And it was a lot less of the operating system in China. Contracts were regarded with a kind of skepticism. But, you didn't sue. Instead, it was a lot more dire. When you violated someone's trust, that was it.
It's over.
Your punishment is you're in the wilderness now.
Yeah.
Not only will I not work with you, but these other people won't work with you. Now, this is not to say that there isn't tremendous corruption in the Far East, but it takes on a different flavor.
Mm-hmm.
And, for example, in the United States, if you violate a contract, I mean, you still have to sue, and there's no guarantee you're going to win.
Yep. It's
convoluted and it's a pain in the ass. It's so much easier when you just behave the way you say you're going to behave. And the vast, vast majority of people that conduct business are actually pretty cool. They stay by they stick by their contracts. They observe not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of it.
Right.
And the reason is it's so much more profitable it's so much more efficient to be honest. It's so much more like I had a car dealer friend I just had such admiration for, and he used to call it the efficiency of generosity. That is, deliver more than that. Yeah, deliver more than you said you would. And you know what happens? That generosity that you demonstrate, it inculcates trust, which makes them more inclined to be generous about the terms in return.
Right.
More inclined. Doesn't mean you're going to insist on it, but it makes it more, it's chances are that your trading partner will see you with the same generosity.
Yeah.
When you are a boss, we used to do this occasionally. I'm proud to say. So I was a creative boss. So I was trying to get creative ideas out of teams. And every once in a while, somebody would come in and it was just one of those ideas that you just knew was brilliant. And I would say, look, here's the situation. I don't know if I'm going to sell that idea because I can't control the client, right? I will tell you though, right here and now, I consider that probably the most brilliant thing I've seen all month. So I'm going to turn my back. And if you leave for the rest of the day, I'm not going to say, because brother, it ain't going to get better than that today. So go to a museum, go to a movie, go to Central Park, but get the hell out of here because that's
a mic drop.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And human beings that do that for one another, what do I get out of that person? I get belief that there's a human being on the other side of this transaction. So even if we disagree, there's a human being there. And the story I'm telling them is, I appreciate you and I appreciate that effort. And when you turn it in like that, I feel so good. I'm handing out.
Yeah.
I'm handing out days off.
Well, then they feel seen and appreciated for who they are and what they've contributed and the effort that they put in and their humanness. Useful. And they see yours.
Yeah. They feel useful. And
useful. Yeah.
They're, so. Hey, listen, I want to go on a rant for a minute about storytelling if you don't mind.
Bring it.
Okay. So I highly recommend that any of your listeners, they have to see the movie Lincoln. And if you haven't already seen it, you have to. I think it's Steven Spielberg's greatest movie, even though this is the same guy that did Schindler's List. Okay. But you have to see Lincoln. And for anybody that has already seen Lincoln, I highly recommend you go back and watch it again.
Why is that?
And there's sort of three reasons. The first is that in the movie Lincoln, which is a towering achievement of narrative and cinematography, it's just the perfect marriage of it. It's a perfect movie. Lincoln himself, the character played by Daniel Day-Lewis, Lincoln the president, tells many stories, and much to the exasperation of certain characters. But he tells them so skillfully that I'm thinking to myself, and this, I'll bet you that reflects a certain degree of realism about in the 1860s, this was the currency of politicians. Their ability to spin a yarn so that people would understand was unique to the American character. There is no question that in Parliament in the UK, they have great orators, and they have a long history of, Disraeli and Gladstone. They were great orators with towering rhetoric. But an American president had to be the master of spinning a yarn, so that people in both country and city would understand the perspective and understand what the promise of the idea was. But there's another reason for seeing it, and that is that the movie portrays a character of a man that we understand by the end of the movie that is a mythical figure. He is a towering mythical figure of what a president should be. But it is a script. Whether Lincoln said many of these things or not, I don't know.
Right.
But it's a script. It's easy for me to believe that Lincoln was like that, but he didn't literally say the things in that story.
Probably not.
Right. Maybe there were some things that were true that was based on letters and so for recollections, but he's a mythical figure. So here's what I'm getting at. People do not give themselves enough preparation when they're going to give a keynote speech, or they're going to deliver a earnings call, or they have to stand up in front of a group of 100 of their employees and talk about the future. They don't prepare enough. They do not give themselves the advantage of writing exactly what they need to say, of telling a story that will touch people's hearts and not just convince their minds. The opportunity is there to be a mythical figure, to deliver so moving a message that people will run through walls for you. And that message has to contain within it what this means to you as an employee, how you benefit.
Right.
And not all benefits are money, and not all benefits are days off. You just need to make people feel like what they do matters. Because if they believe it, they won't throw up before they show up for work on Monday morning, which happened to me. I have had jobs where I was so not looking forward to going into the office that I would vomit. And You
Same
have that
here.
experience?
I do. I had literally a panic attack and had to take my tie off and pull off to the side of the road so that I didn't crash my car.
A literal panic attack because you just are not looking forward to this at all.
Was so awful.
Now, but if you really believe in what you're doing, if you believe that what you do benefits other people, that even if you're feeling that sense, you'll still be able to arrive because you're going, yes, but I'm useful. Yes, but I'm necessary. Yes, but I matter. Like the Thai boxers, it's not about me, it's about my family.
Something bigger.
And you'll have to kill me before I go out of this ring. And it is about something bigger. It's about my usefulness and my importance to somebody else. Now, when this guy at my job says that you're unraveling right in front of my eyes, what he's telling me is, I notice you. I see you. I see that you're unhappy. I see that you're suffering. Jesus, man, I care enough about you. I'll fly air cover for you, but take the damn day off. And what's more, I'll go you one better. Get some suits. You look like shit.
By the way, that's the story that I saw that captivated me that first time that changed my day at the top of the intro. That was the story where I was like, this guy can spin a yarn. This guy can change my day. And I can do that for others as well. And the people I coach and work with can do that for others as well. You know, the impact that you were talking about, the way that you were describing it, I've had innumerable clients, business owners who have had challenges with their employees. And, you know, you can always go in and say, hey, look, you've shown up, 3 times this week late for your reporting time. You do it again and we're going to have to part ways. Sure, you can go in there and hold them accountable in that way. And, I don't think it's going to generate the effect that you're looking for. Where I've seen it profoundly affect that employee and really create the change that they were looking for is when they couch it in a way like this, where they said, I've noticed you've had a challenge getting in on time this past week. I'm worried about you. Is everything okay?
Yeah, there you go.
Right? You've just recognized the human being that's in front of you and connected with them in a way that they feel important, that they matter, that them as a person, not the spreadsheet that was waiting for them, not the customer call that they had to make, not the task they had to do, but I'm worried about you. Are you okay? Every single time that a client has positioned their concern and their feedback and their accountability, and maybe not at every level, there comes a point you got to have a real come to Jesus, but
yeah, for sure.
But to address that topic from their humanity and with their humanity, 100% of the time, I can say without fail, that has at least gotten them the inertia to have the conversation later if it doesn't change the employee's behavior, when they've seen them and recognized them as a human being. And that's what that guy did with you when he was like, Neal, I'm seeing you unraveling, buddy. I'm worried about you.
Yeah. It's so funny because the way he said it was not sweet. It was,
good like, God, man.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It was, but he was fatherly in a way that I needed. I think the reason he did it that way was he didn't want any argument. This is not a request. This is an order.
Right.
Because
so commanded a certain authority.
Right. Yeah. And I do have to say that I remember distinctly, the sensation of going, I don't have to work for my boss. I want to go to work for that guy.
Yeah.
Like life is short. Why would I want to work for that guy? Because
I'll bet
that'll be my life, where somebody cares about me and I'll, 2 a.m. with a shovel for that guy. I'm not going to do that for my current boss. Yeah. And my current boss might mean well, but it's just not the same experience.
Yeah.
And so let's go back to your premise a second ago about you can say, if you do it again, you're fired. It's yet again, it's just more reinforcement that nobody cares about me, that all I am to these people is a punch the clock thing, as opposed to, are you okay? And all of a sudden the conversation and everything about the game has changed utterly. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to get 100% of the people that they're not going to respond in a positive way. Not 100%. It, for all I know, it's 70 or whatever, but 100% you're going to do better than if you just said, we can't have unrealistic expectations about people in the sense that every human being is good. Not every person is.
Nope.
There's that we know that on a bell curve, some people are sociopaths, some people are killers.
Yeah.
And then some people will throw themselves on a grenade for you at the drop of a hat. There's the opposite. There's people that are actually empathetic to a fault, in a
Agree.
not healthy way.
Right.
But 2/3 of us are right there within one standard deviation of the center.
Yeah.
And therefore highly responsive to human outreach and expression of care. And when you find somebody that cares about you legitimately, you will automatically, subconsciously, without even realizing it, you'll put an effort. And I think that there's an enormous thing to be gained for young people. It's like, look, you don't have to be in the film business, and you don't have to be in the, you don't have to be a professional athlete or a professional musician to enjoy what you do.
Yeah.
Just embrace and enjoy the sensation of showing up and knowing you're valuable to the team, that the role you play is really good.
So well put. I struggle with how to make this point. So let me just kind of like claw my way through it. Your superpower is your ability to craft an impeccable story. And you've been around the block a few times. And what I'm hearing from you and have experienced from you in your many stories that you tell that I'm religiously searching for on the interwebs, and in our conversation today, and in the Storyfire course, I get lots of Neal.
I know, really too much.
There's what we would define as the criteria for a really profoundly effective leader and a really profoundly well-crafted story. We've got, it's not a coincidence, the level of overlap between them, right? There's a self-awareness, like you know where you're at in the room with the people that you're about to talk to. You've got compassion and empathy. You're seeing the humanity of people. You're an effective communicator. You believe in your audience, or you believe in the people. You believe in yourself. There's trust there. Like all of those, when they're woven into a story, are the ingredients for a impeccably crafted story and an impeccably skilled leader. I don't find that a coincidence. Do you?
No, as I was saying before, the storytelling is the operating system of human beings, how we understand everything.
Yeah.
This is why I say when a company puts the HR function under the legal function, they're telling a story. And all of us, by our actions, communicate the story we want to tell.
Yeah.
You're probably familiar with the idea that there is such a thing as string theory. String theory in a quantum mechanics way suggests that there is no actual matter in neutrons and quarks and atoms. That in fact, there's no there. There's nothing physical. All that when my finger seems to hit a solid object, what's really happening is frequencies of energy are repelling each other.
Right.
That strings of energy vibrating at a certain frequency are, in the sense of magnets, pushing away other things that vibrate at a different frequency.
Okay.
People are similar in that some people have a subsonic charisma. They walk into a room and there is an air about them that we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
And that our perception is that we have receptors that are picking up on signals that we can't put into words.
It's either attractive or it's repelling, though.
And it's, or somewhere on the spectrum. But some people really have mastered the energy frequency that is attractive to people, that people find themselves, and it's funny too, because the very word attract is a magnetic word, right?
Exactly.
It means that you are drawn to somebody else. And when, let's say, for example, that you take the time to try to craft a story for an earnings call, I'm grateful that everybody has shown up for this earnings call, because I want to communicate a few things that I think it's going to benefit you as a journalist, or benefit you as an investor, or benefit you as a shareholder. I want to tell you a story that I think you might find instructive. It's about, say, for example, this call it's about the benefits of long-term thinking. You tell a story about somebody who planted a tree, and, any number of ways to tell the story.
Yeah.
But it's about the benefit of long-term thinking. And so in your earnings call, you're saying, we have invested in this thing that's going to take a while for it to gin up its result. But I have a feeling what it will result in is our dominance of this category. In other words, we will be, because others are unwilling to make that kind of investment, we're going to be the ones that ultimately pressure. So when you tell a story about the benefits of long-term thinking in a way that everybody goes, yes, I see what you mean. And yes, I agree with that. And yes, I've had a similar experience. Then they will understand why you've decided to make an investment. And it makes the earnings call make more sense. They see what you mean. And what's more, they go, I see what kind of person they are. They're able to paint this picture for me in such a way that I know that when they talk to their own people, they're able to communicate it to their direct reports, and the direct reports are able to repeat it to their direct reports, and the entire organization's all singing off the same song sheet. Every oar is pulling in the same direction. And the only reason you wouldn't pull in the same direction is if you are either a saboteur or you're a waste of skin. So the power of storytelling as a business, let me rephrase that, as a mechanism of trade, of communicating a vision that people find satisfying, is attractive. In a business sense. I want to be part of it, but also physically attractive. Like I am attracted to that. And great actors are sex symbols, not just because of how they look, although generally speaking, they're pretty good looking. They're impossibly good looking.
Well put. Impossibly.
But people are drawn to them because they're able to portray a character. This is why I was saying like the Lincoln thing was a mythical figure.
Yeah.
He's a character in your mind that stands for something. When you can tell a story well, the opposite sex finds that incredibly appealing.
Yeah. My wife and I started a series not too long ago, and we were like an episode and a half in, maybe 2 in, and it's getting kind of rave reviews, and people generally seem to like it. And she and I were both so put off by it, and we were kind of having a conversation about like, what is this? Why doesn't this resonate with us? And it came down to, even as anti-heroes, I can't root for these people. There's nothing about them where I can relate to their humanity. And there's no point in continuing in this story and continuing to watch this. I can't root for them at all. There's nothing, to use your word, there's nothing attractive about them. Even as an anti-hero, you can't see or relate to or understand their humanity by the way the story is being told. And we haven't picked it back up. Like I can't even imagine continuing on with the story because there's nothing relatable there. I want to punctuate something too. The way you said, like, you used a very tangible example of, say, an earnings call. And if that leader or CEO or whoever happens to be on that earnings call is conveying the company's vision in such a way that the analysts and everybody on that call, shareholders on that call, all have this palpable sense of the direction of the company. If they were able to weave this story together in such a way for this earnings call, you know what they're doing, boots on the ground, day to day in the running of that company. Not only was that earnings call a success, you emboldened the trust of them by saying, this leader knows what the hell they're doing. They know how to communicate the vision.
100%. Any venture capitalist, no matter what your idea is, ultimately they are investing in the leadership.
100%.
They believe you are the person that's going to make this real. Mm-hmm. And VCs that I've spoken to have all said, oh yeah, it's absolutely essential. There are so many ways to die. There's so many reasons why an investment won't pay off that they really want to feel like you've hit everything I need you to hit. Now, it can be a brilliant idea. It's not essential that it's a brilliant idea. It's essential that they can see how it would make money. And then, but most of all, they say, look, there are so many obstacles to success. I need to feel like the leadership understands the challenge, isn't singing me a rosy song. They've walked in here in their pitch deck and they've explained all the ways it might go wrong.
Right.
So that I know their conscience of the likely challenges to occur. There's nothing quite as sweet to the ears of a VC or an angel investor to know that the leadership understands has a realistic sense of the risks, a realistic sense of the obstacles, and yet the conviction it will still work. Okay. Now, to go back to the vibration and the energy and the attractiveness, there is something incredibly powerful in people feeling like they want to be around you. And what it means is that when people do business with you, they like it. They like we were always saying in our advertising agencies, it is essential that you be the best meeting of the day. Like when you walk out of that room, there's no question that was the best. That was the most fun they were going to have. That was the most insightful. That presented them with the coolest paradox. That filled them with. Always remember, fellas, your objective of the first date is to get the second date.
I wish I had known that principle.
Me too.
Much earlier professionally.
Me too.
You need to be the best meeting of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. That you absolutely need to leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
And so what that involves is that you can't simply go in there and parrot numbers, and you can't simply tell things how they are. You need to make them feel attracted to you in such a way that they look forward to your reappearance. A car dealer that you can trust, that demonstrates that they're not going to chisel you. You will buy 15 cars from that guy.
Yep. And I'll send my friends.
And you'll send your friends.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And you know what? This is the efficiency of generosity is when you demonstrate that you have an understanding that not everything needs to come with a price tag. The car dealer that I just was such a believer in, when an elderly person would come in, if it was below a certain dollar figure, usually I think it was like $70 or something, they would just say, "Don't worry about it, Mr. Hotchinger. Just go, I got it. It's on me." And why would they do that? They're just lost $70. They didn't just lose $70. They just got $5,000 because they're going home and they're going to tell their son, "That nice dealer didn't charge me anything."
Right?
What? Yeah, no, they said that was on them. I love Raul. He does my oil changes for nothing. He's such a pleasant young man. They practically come down to see if it's real.
Yeah.
Hey, is Raul here? Yeah, he's over there. Did you really do this for my mom? Oh yeah, I love your mom. Well, guess what? So do I. It's the efficiency of generosity. The efficiency of being a good hombre is that. But again, to return it to storytelling, if you don't mind my grinding that axe.
Grind it.
Our actions tell stories,
Yeah.
but our stories tell stories too. And people need to know from you what's important to you, what matters to you.
We've gotten metaphysical, we've gotten esoteric, we've gotten specific, we've gotten a little emotional. I'm going to get a little tactical here, if you don't mind, and I can have you spout these, or I can read them off to you from your Storyfire course. There are some technical nuts and bolts elements that you say, 7 stories that great leaders tell. Do you want to you want to tick those off? Or you want me?
Well, I want to focus on one entirely.
Okay, let's do that.
And that is it's the barriers to success, the conflicts we're likely to encounter, the problems we're going to run up against. And why I consider that so important, that a great leader is going to be realistic about the challenges you face individually doing your role and the challenges the organization faces, the competition we're up against. Because when a leader is conscious of the difficulties and the challenges that they know they're going to face as an organization and you as an individual, when they're conscious and they have a really good radar image of who we're up against and competing against, when they respect what other companies are good at, what it does is when you're an employee, it fills you with confidence that we're going to win because they have a realistic understanding of where
you have your Braveheart Rob Roy moment. Freedom! Like it's not gonna, this might not turn out well.
Well, I want people to be conscious of is that a leader is not Pollyanna and they're not selling you a bill of goods. They understand nothing will turn people off faster than feeling like the leader doesn't know what they're talking about.
Being sold to. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That they're talking about any leader that is not full, they don't fully appreciate the difficulty of what they're going to try to achieve. I'm very suspicious of that person, either A, they don't know, or B, they don't have any faith in us.
Right.
That
They're
they
lying.
understand. Yeah. And so, for example, if they say, look, we make a car and it's a great car, but other car makers are great cars. And the ones I particularly respect are these brands. And we need to outperform them on these metrics. And I do understand that's not easy to do. I mean, it's like do you remember the 1980 Olympic team is facing the US men's hockey team is facing the Soviets. The Soviets were a juggernaut. The Soviets were unbeatable. They were the greatest team on the face of the earth at that time. They were going in and they were manhandling professional hockey teams in the NHL.
Right.
Go and play the Rangers and just embarrass them. You know, 8-0.
Yeah.
And so Herb Brooks, who was the coach of the American team, he could not say to the American boys, we can do it, fellas. It's not like that.
It wasn't a pep rally.
No, he has to say to them, if we played this team 10 times, they would win 9 times, but not tonight. I understand what you're up against. I have a full grasp of what they're good at. I knew that going in. I knew that when I recruited you, I understood what you were up against. I didn't pick you at random. I picked you because I knew that with you, I could beat them that one time. It's because they're not going to see you coming. They're not going to understand. We're not playing the game we're not playing an NHL team. They think they're coming in and they're playing a junior varsity version of an NHL team.
Right.
We're not going to play a game that remotely resembles that. We're playing a different game and they're not going to see it coming. We're playing a brand of team hockey nobody else on earth plays.
Yeah.
And I prepared you for this moment. You are going to win, fellas. But the only reason you can believe me is because I know who they are. I'm not shielding you from the uncomfortable truth that if they played you a second time, they'd know who you are then.
Yeah.
There was one particular goal, by the way, that was fucking fantastic. And it was at the end of the first period. It was the second goal. And the reason it was so fantastic was this. They shot it with 3 seconds to play. And the Soviets literally were coming off the ice.
They were skating off.
Yeah. And why that to me was so emblematic of what the American team was about was we play to the fucking end, right? we play to the last end. We're going to the buzzer. We do not give up ever. We play till they tell us we're dead. We keep playing. And everybody on the team knew that. So it was no surprise to the other players on the American squad that you don't skate off.
Yeah. Till the Zamboni runs us over.
Till the Zamboni's on the ice. But the Soviets were so sure they were going to beat the Americans that they were being lackadaisical. And that was why Herb Brooks was such a genius, because he said, I built you to beat those guys. They're not going to see you coming. They're going to come off. He didn't predict that exact moment, but that was what was in the minds of the Soviets. You don't understand who you're on the ice with. They're going to the last second and they caught you with your pants down. And, the fact that they gave up Tretiak, who was the greatest goalie on earth at that time, he was psychologically undone by this. He's going, I don't know what these people are going to do. Like it's not like playing in the NHL. Yeah, they were completely relentless. Their age helped them actually, because when you're a gazelle at 21,
yeah,
you can go. It's not going to kill you to basically go out there and give it everything. Single ounce.
Leave it all on the ice. Yeah,
and they did. They were a team that was in such good shape. They were in that 21-year-old shape. That where you're corded steel from top to bottom. You're elastic.
Look,
and this is just my way of saying that you asked me about like the 7 stories that leaders tell. But to my way of thinking, the best story a leader can tell is to be both completely realistic, completely aware of the challenges, and in the face of that, still have belief.
Yes. As I listen to you telling that story, I have that list here in front of me, and everything that coach told the team contains all those elements. Do you mind if I list them?
No, please do. Yeah.
Where we came from, why we can't stay here, where we're going, right? And it has to be about the team. And by the way, all of these have we, not you, not
Right.
me, we.
Right.
How we'll get there, what we believe, who we serve and what we help them do, and how we are unique. And all 7 of those kind of were encapsulated in that coach's.
Yeah.
So he was truth telling, but he wove a story containing all of those elements that lit those guys up and allowed them, despite or even because of that ever daunting challenge of being the Soviets.
There's an element in that list. It's who do we serve? Who are we doing this for? And it was at Lake Placid in 1980. That was an extra 20% gas because you are doing this you're college kids representing your country against the most ferocious, fearsome, and skilled.
Right in the middle of the Cold War.
Right in the middle of the Cold War.
Yeah.
It's boys, you're built for this. And they're here to see it. Now show me. And somebody cheering for you makes an enormous difference. Somebody who's depending on you means you can go twice as far. You can do things you didn't think you could do. You can do things you didn't believe you could do with enough faith. And it was, I want to return to something you said a moment ago, which is it's we. I had the experience of working for a person who once said to me, "I'm already rich. Your job is to make me famous." and in that instant, I don't think he was aware that my thinking was, if I could kill you and get away with it, I'd do it right now.
What a laughably unfortunate thing for somebody to say and somebody to hear.
No, it's useful in the sense that, okay, now I know who you are,
good data,
what you are.
Yep.
And I will always reserve the right. If I get pancreatic cancer, I know whose house I'm visiting first. The most dangerous person on earth is the one who has nothing to lose. And you cannot taunt and torment them. We are in a stage of cultural migration right now. Are you familiar with what's that Vogue magazine editor's big ball? The Met Gala.
The Met Gala.
Okay. So the Met Gala is symptomatic of a misunderstanding about how hard it is to be middle class in America right now. They are just rubbing our noses in it. And they're not aware of it. They're not aware.
How so?
Of how we're taking that in.
Yeah.
I
have my ideas. Why are you saying that?
Well, no, you share yours.
Well, the grandiosity of it, for starters, and punctuated by the fact that isn't every ticket like to get to
$75,000 to get
$75,000. I mean, you have to be handpicked as a style icon. And second, you have to shill out $75,000 of your own money, and it goes to what?
It goes to the Met.
I think it goes to
It's not a charity. It's something else. It's
right.
Kind of
but it's not going to.
It's not going
the
to
underserved
save the
of our society.
I know that.
Right.
Yeah. Now, when I see that, I go, I know it's Hunger Games, right? It's a parody that's so similar to, if you go and you watch the Hunger Games right now, you'll go like this, oh crap. Or like the Hunger Games looks like a Nostradamus. The silliness and the excess and the weird frivolity, Gaza, Ukraine, Taiwan,
Sudan,
human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
You can make it, between the two of us, we could list 50 things.
Easy.
And it is so tone deaf. It's not uplifting in the sense that it's a story. The story they're telling is about human struggle, and yet we're all in this together. It doesn't tell that story at all. It tells a story of tone deaf elitism and excess that glories in using up resources that might otherwise go to the deserving. And I'm going, you being unaware of this are going to reap a whirlwind. And it's really important for all businesses right now to be about we and not about me, to understand that you are not alone on this planet. And we are traders, not business people. And we owe it to our fellow human creatures to go through the world in an effort to leave things better than you found them, to understand that other people are walking around confused, unsure, disadvantaged. This gal I was speaking to this morning on a call, where she's from Pakistan and she's an immigrant, and she has two things going for her that a lot of Americans don't, which is she realizes how bad it can get.
Right.
And so she's grateful to the opportunity that she has here. But she's also upset that this shining city on the hill that she's landed in often doesn't understand its role in the world or the promise that it represents. And it doesn't live that truth for its own people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's disappointing to her. And I thought, wow, that's hard to hear as an American.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear an immigrant say, I am incredibly grateful for being here, but I believe you're squandering the promise that you could be living by. And to me, that's choosing to say, this is about we, it's about us. It's about, like I say, back to the earnings call, the CEO is saying, I want to tell you about where we're headed and the investments that we've made that I'm excited about, because I believe that what they offer is us. They offer us a competitive advantage over the long term that is more than just great quarterly earnings.
Right.
It's much, much more than that. It's essentially it's hegemony over a whole category, because we're willing to do what others aren't willing to do. My hope is that you on this call, the investors and the journalists and and people who are just listening in because you want to hear the story of where our future goes, I'm hopeful that what you're going to see is what I see, is an opportunity that we're seizing because other people don't have the nerve or the backbone to do.
Right. It's inclusive.
Yeah. And if I'm the CEO and I'm delivering something similar to that, I'm feeling really good about this. Even if I lose some people, I'm good with that, because in the end, I just want the true believers. I want the true believers that aren't going to give me friction over this. I need to be able to make these kinds of investments for our eventual success,
right,
and our larger success. And companies that think like that they're thinking over the horizon, they tend not to pollute. They tend not to try to screw the cities they're in.
Right.
They tend to donate a lot to like the school system.
They're planting the trees that they won't be around to reap the fruit from,
because the company will be around to reap the fruit from. And
right.
Even and here's one further.
Counterintuitive.
Yeah. One further, and that is that companies are made up of people with names and trajectories. And when you work for a boss like that, years from now, you wind up doing many of the things you watched a boss like that do. And you have a whole tribe of people that used to work there, that you see the world the same way. And you start companies. If you trace Apple and Hewlett Packard and Cisco and stuff, many of them owe their genetics and their outlooks to a company called Fairchild Semiconductor. And the people that were Fairchild Semiconductor came out of Grinnell, Iowa, where ostentatious display of wealth was very frowned upon.
Uh-huh.
And there's a story called, I think it's called Go West, Young Man. And it's by Tom Wolfe in a book called Hooking Up. It's a collection of journalistic stories.
Okay.
And in it, he talks about the formation of the early attitude of Silicon Valley, the very horizontal sort of thing. And in Kara Swisher's most recent book, which is called Burn Book, she opens with the thought that, don't hide behind your BS. It's always about the money. It's always only been about the money. Well, there was a time when it wasn't, when it really was about the thrill of exploration and creating something from nothing and the future of technology. And I lament knowing both of those environments. I went to a school called Menlo College School of Business Administration on the peninsula. I graduated in 1983. That was the frickin' birth of, that was Silicon Valley's coming out party, was about that year.
Right.
And I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming at all. But then, so I knew back then what that environment was like and how cool it was and how friendly, and it was like Steve Wozniak. Like, that was Silicon Valley, was people like Woz, one of the founders of Apple. And now I see it now, the acquisitiveness and the avarice,
right,
and the self-interest, and I just go, oh, such promise.
Consolidation after consolidation, and companies rolling up under others, and
I mean, that's a perpetual human struggle, but
and a pendulum.
Yes, correct.
And a pendulum. I'll keep my faith there.
Yeah, I choose to, because to be otherwise is to, I don't want to be right if I'm a pessimist. I don't want to be right.
Well put. Yeah. Man, so many great stories that you've shared today. And I'm sorry, I expected it. And you delivered phenomenally well.
Thank you, Dan.
You're
such good company.
Well,
brothers by another mother.
Brothers by another mother. You've got a phrase that you use several times in the Storyfire course, which again I'm going to just heap praise upon. Life is so much easier when people like you.
Yeah.
And not only are you,
that's my favorite.
It's one of my favorites too. Not only have you brought the wisdom and the experience, but it's just been a genuine pleasure and joy to talk to you. Neal Foard, you are incredibly likable, and you got the chops to back it up. And it's one of the reasons you were at the top of my list to get on this season of the Clearing Obstacles podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Back at you 100%. You're a joy.
I mentioned at the top of the episode that I found you on social media, Instagram specifically. I want to advocate to our listeners that if you find yourself using social media, that you do so judiciously in a way that it's adding value to your life, because the algorithms, they won't serve you that way. They don't give two shits about you. And you can start that by following Neal Foard, spelling Nealfoard, easy to misspell. I did the first couple times I was looking for you again. We'll put that link in the show notes so to make it easy for you. Where else can somebody go? Storyfire.net if they're interested in your course, and they should be.
And I'll storyfire.net. And then I'll throw one last thing out at you, which is I have a Patreon page, and I'm doing an audiobook that's fictional, but much of it is true. And it's called, the name of the book is Rancho Madhammer. And you can find it, if you can listen to the first chapter for free. It's at nealfoard.com. And
I will be sure to I've already listened to that chapter too, by the way. I didn't know that was available for public consumption. So I will.
Yeah. And I posted chapter 6 about 3 weeks ago, and I'm due for chapter 7. It's an audiobook because I believe that in my case, you have to hear me say it for it to work. It's not enough to see it written on the page. And because inflection adds a lot. So there you go.
For sure. Some stories work that way, don't they? They lend themselves to certain media over others.
Yeah. Anything that Christopher Walken reads, it means something completely different than when he says it than when it's on the page.
Yeah. I read wristwatch on the page. I hear it from him. It's an entirely different experience.
Yeah. It's just, there's such a, when you think about like when he does, I'm trying to think of like he does a story in a book about a movie about a pool player. He goes, the lion, he gets picked on by I can't do it. I can't do it justice. Anyway, just in principle, my favorite line of his from anything is, I got to have more cowbell.
More cowbell.
I got a fever. And the old prescription.
Was that was an SNL skit, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they said that everybody that was in that skit said, we had no idea how funny that was going to be until the first time when he said that. And then we go, oh my God, how did they know? Gotta have more cowbell, baby. Explore the space.
So Rancho Mad Hammer will not be coming in print necessarily, at least at this stage in its development. It's an audio format only.
Yeah.
From the illustrious Neal Foard.
Yeah. And it is a labor of love. It's the one thing that I'm proudest of. When I look at it, I go, I really like this. I can't get my family to listen to it, but because they probably heard me enough. But I like it.
You're getting a new audience.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, Neal, thank you again so much. I've appreciated everything you've lent to our listeners today. I know they're coming away from this conversation much richer in their perspective on storytelling, on effective leadership, and certainly on being a good human. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Dan. It's such a pleasure.
We at Best Self Coaching hope you got all that you came here for from today's episode. And if you want more like this, be sure to follow and subscribe to Clearing Obstacles on your favorite listening platform. You can also go to bestself.coach/podcast for more information. There you'll find more episodes and links to the content discussed today, as well as info on how you can get in touch if you're interested in clearing your own obstacles to become the kind of leader that you know your team is waiting for. Your business should serve your life, so let us help you get there from here, because nobody should do this on their own. Thanks again for listening. See you soon.